Hello and welcome to the Graphic 45 YouTube channel. My name is Lynn, or LV Handcrafted, across all of the socials, and today I am going to make this holiday storage box from scratch using some really nice medium weight chipboard that is available at Graphic 45, and I'm going to decorate it with the "'Twas a Night Before Christmas" paper collection, which I absolutely love. This is a very sturdy box and it's great for storage. It's great for gift giving. Let's go ahead and make this. Okay, so I'm starting off here with some of the supplies, and there'll be two screenfuls of supplies. This first one, I'm going to show all of the chipboard pieces. In total, you'll need 10 cuts. The bottom of the box is 5 3/4 of an inch square. The top of the box is 6 inches square. Then the sides along the bottom are 5 3/4 by 4 inches tall, and you'll need four of those pieces. The top, or the lid, the sides of that are 6 inches wide by 1 1/4 tall, and you'll need four pieces of that as well. So besides that, we'll need some strips. They basically end up being about 1 1/4 inch high, and the length of each of the sides, and you'll just score those in half. Then some more black cardstock. We'll have two pieces that are 5 3/4 of an inch square, one piece that's 6 inches square, and a couple of additional panels. One that is two panels that measure 5 3/4 wide by 3 7/8 tall, and two panels that measure 7 inches wide by 3 3/8 tall, and then of course your pattern paper of choice. I think I ended up only really using, I think it was, I think you could do away with just two sheets of 12 by 12 and have this covered, but you may need more than that to do some additional decorating if you'd like. So getting started, what I will do is assemble the box. And I'm going to start with the bottom. The process will be the same for the actual construction of the box lid. So I won't show that on camera, but I will talk through how to do that. So I've got my box bottom here, and these are those strips that I talked about that are about 1 1/4 inch wide. I just score it in half. I cut them to the length of the side. So my box bottom, all four sides, it's a square box, so that does make things a lot easier. You could easily adapt this to be a rectangular size box, whatever size box you'd like. You just want to cut these strips so that they are exactly the same length of each of the four sides of your box. In my case, as I mentioned, it's 5 3/4 of an inch wide. And I am using a combination of double-sided dry adhesive as well as liquid adhesive. The reason for that is because the dry adhesive is really good for giving me that really instant grab, and once it's in place, it'll just kind of hold it there and I can continue on to the next step, onto the next piece, without having to worry about the previous pieces wiggling around. But the liquid adhesive, for one, it gives me a little bit of wiggle room as I place this and position it initially, but in the long run, it's going to give me a more permanent hold. Whatever adhesive you end up using, you do want to make sure that you are burnishing really well. I like to use an ergonomic bone folder because it's nice and wide and it just feels better in my hand. And I burnish pretty firmly to really make sure that that double-sided dry adhesive, I'm knocking all of the air out of it, and with liquid adhesive that it is spreading that liquid adhesive out and I don't get any glue lines. I'm working with cardstocks that I'm very familiar with, so I know these are thick enough to where no glue lines are going to show. But if you are at all concerned about that, you definitely will want to burnish, and that should help because that'll spread the glue out. This panel here is one of the two panels that has been cut to 5 3/4 of an inch square, and I'm going to glue that right to the bottom. This will cover up all of those glue tabs that are at the bottom. And so that gives you a very neat finish. It also covers all of your chipboard entirely. So for example, if you were using chipboard that maybe was craft color instead of black, and you didn't want that to show through, this is what that piece will help you to do, is cover up all of the chipboard. Now that we have those hinges attached to all the way around our bottom panel, I'm going to work my way around all four sides and attach the side panels to our box. Take note that what I'm doing is I am lining up the side panel on the outer edge of the bottom piece so that everything is flush to the table. So these side panels, they aren't sitting on top of the bottom panel, they are sitting on the outside edge of it, butting up against it. So bear that in mind, and that's one of the reasons why the lid piece has been cut to 6 inches square as opposed to 5 3/4, because this medium weight chipboard is really nice. It's got a very nice thickness to it, maybe about 1/8 of an inch, probably a little bit less than that. I haven't actually measured, but because this is getting adhered on the outer edges of our bottom piece, that's going to make the bottom of the box larger than 5 3/4. So that's why we need the lid to be larger than 5 3/4 so that it can actually fit over top of the bottom. And on top of that, we're going to be wrapping this with some pattern papers, and there's going to be a layer or two of pattern papers. So that also is going to add some thickness. I have these black panels here. These are the ones that I cut to 3 7/8 tall. And how I will use these were actually initially just some scraps that I have that I cut down. But essentially what I'm going to do is give myself about 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch glue tab. And then I am going to score 5 3/4 away from that first score line. And again, give myself another 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch of a glue tab. The reason for this piece is, again, it's going to be on the inside, but it's going to be the layer that actually covers up all of our glue tabs when we're done. So I'm just preparing them now, but I actually won't glue these until I've wrapped the outside of the box with some pretty pattern paper, and but I just want to have all of my pieces ready to go. But that's going to give the inside a very nice finished look. So when you're done with this box, it's going to be really pretty, very finished. You're not going to see any glue tabs, and it's also going to be very well secured because we have individual pieces of chipboard coming together at those corners. The second purpose of these panels is also to provide some extra structure so that you can see this is going to wrap around the inside of those corners. And so it's just going to be another layer that helps to hold that corner in place so that, you've got two separate panels just, butting up against each other. They're not overlapping at all. And this is going to add a little bit of extra sturdiness to the box. So I'll set those aside, but I do want to make sure that I miter the corners of my glue tabs. It just helps to neaten everything up. All of those are going to be hidden. And you do need two pieces that were cut with glue tabs. And then the other two black panels were cut to the same height, 3 7/8. And they are cut to the width of my box, which is 5 3/4. And those two pieces that don't have the glue tabs, that's what I'm going to use to cover up the glue tabs from these two pieces here. And again, I'm going to use a combination of double-sided dry adhesive and liquid adhesive when I do go to put this, attach this to the inside of the box. I like to make sure that I've got the double-sided dry adhesive as close to the edge along all of the outside edges, and that way it's really the outside edges I think that are at more risk of getting kind of snagged on something or lifting. And so I like to try to get a really good seal all the way around. And it's nice to have adhesive go all the way to the edge, but sometimes liquid adhesive can be kind of messy. So by having the dry adhesive go all the way to the edge, when I do squiggle on that liquid adhesive, I can just squiggle it messily in the center and not have to worry about having to get that too close to the edge, so much so that it might actually ooze out and be a little bit messy. So I'm going to set those aside and continue to actually construct the box. And as you can see, the four sides are just flopping out because they're not attached to each other yet. So these are the pieces that I didn't show, but I did list initially. And they again are just some hinges, just some glue tabs, cut to about an inch and a quarter wide and scored in half. And the length of each of these pieces just needs to be a little bit shorter than the height of the box. So the height of my box is 4 inches high. So I've cut these to just under that. And in any case, you don't need this to necessarily stretch the entire height because I'm gonna glue that the previous pieces, those black panels, that's gonna go right over top of this. So it's going to get secured very, very well. We've got this first layer here that does the initial join where we attach each of the side panels to each other. Then I'm going to wrap the box with pattern paper from the outside, and that's going to adhere these side panels to each other from the outside. And then we have those black panels that I just prepared, which will wrap around this again on the inside. So these corners are going to be pretty well secured in place. So at the end of the day, this box will be, I'm making it so that it lasts, and you can maybe even put some heavier things in it, and it should hold up just fine because the medium weight chipboard is really, really sturdy, fairly thick stuff. So it does make for really nice construction. And this you could make as a memory box, you could make it as a keepsake box, a trinket box, or I'm using it as a gift box, and and I'm gonna put a gift inside. But the box itself can be used afterwards too, so I feel like it as well is a nice little gift in and of itself. So I like making boxes like these because they're pretty, and then they're also practical because I feel like it's the sort of box that you wouldn't throw away, you wouldn't recycle, you would actually keep it and maybe find, you could put your notions in it, you can, find anything to kind of store in there. And so it's really nice to be able to whip one of these up, and easy to do to customize as well for if you are using this as a way to give a gift, to adapt it to whatever size that you need. So I've got all four of my sides attached now, and this isn't the most secure because at the moment, the only thing holding this whole box together are those glue tabs, which is just 80-pound cover weight cardstock. But once we get all of the different layers on, then this was going to start to really become very secure. So this first piece that I'm working on here is going to wrap around the outside of our box. And so you can pick whatever decorative papers you like. I like using a vertical stripe for the box because the there I'm not going to be able to cover all four sides of the box with one piece of pattern paper. And I find that the vertical stripes is one where when the patterns line up at the edge, it's really hard to tell that it's not a continuous pattern. So I've cut this piece so that it is the width of my box, so 5 3/4 of an inch wide, but it's taller than my box by about 1 1/4 inches. So I would say the height of my box is 4 inches. I was working with scraps, so that's why I didn't have this pre-measured. But the principle of this is that you want to score 1/2 inch on one edge. And then starting hanging that on the inside, that 1/2 inch is a glue tab that wraps to the inside, wrap it around to the sides, and then I give it a nice bend to wrap it around the bottom. And the reason why I do this rather than actually measure is because of the fact that the side pieces were attached to the outside of our bottom panel. So anytime I work with chipboard, I know that that's going to add some extra thickness and it's going to change the dimensions of things ever so slightly. So if I were to cut that piece to exactly, the height of what my box is at, it may not actually be a perfect fit because this piece has to wrap around from the inside. It has to go span the thickness of the chipboard, go all the way down, and again span the thickness of the chipboard again and wrap around to the bottom. So to get a nice snug precise fit, I just do a dry fit, and so you'll have to kind of, it just depends on the chipboard that you buy and whether you're using something a little bit thicker or a little bit thinner than the Graphic 45 chipboard that I'm using. Your measurements might end up being different. So the surefire thing to do is just start with your one score line at about 1/2 inch is what I used, and then wrap your panel around to figure out where those additional score lines need to go. So I have two pieces that I cut to this size here, and similar to how I cut the inside black panels, these two pieces that are the exact same width as my box, those are going to cover up some additional glue tabs. So I'll show you that again. So I just will wrap this around my box, give it a soft bend, and I'll actually use that soft bend as an indicator of where to score. Now I've got some additional panels here, and I'm going to do the same thing. Just hang 1/2 inch around to the inside, wrap it around the outside to the bottom. But this panel here I've cut to wider than my box. It's actually probably closer to 7 inches. And what I'll do is wrap it around. The first time I did it, I wrapped top to bottom. Now I'm going to wrap left to right, and I'm going to wrap it all the way around to the opposite sides. And the reason why I'm wrapping this around to the opposite side, there's two reasons. One, as I mentioned earlier, this piece will actually secure that corner where the two pieces of chipboard meet up. So it helps to add some sturdiness to this box so that it, that corner is really, really held in place. It also helps to cover all of the chipboard in that corner as well, so you don't see any exposed chipboard. If I were to just cut this so that it's the exact same width of the side, there might be right in the corner, there might be some exposed chipboard. So by wrapping it around, I actually cover that entire corner. There's no risk of any chipboard being visible, and it helps to strengthen that corner from the outside because it's going to be completely wrapped, and it's another single piece. It'll look like this when it's wrapped around, so that it is another piece of cardstock that holds those two side pieces in place. So this piece here, it's not only being wrapped around top to bottom, from the inside of the box, around the top, down the side, and to the bottom. It's also being wrapped around from the left side, across the front, and then wrapped around to the right side. So you get a really nice finish this way, and all the way around this box, all of the chipboard ends up being covered up, and you're not going to have any exposed chipboard edges. And you'll want two pieces like this. So again, I just start off on the long edge with a score line at about 1/2 inch just to get myself started. And then what I'll do is just take this to my box and just start wrapping it around the box so that I can find out where I need to put my next score line. And I give myself a nice soft bend, and I'll still score there because scoring will help you to get a really straight score line or a really straight fold, and it as well prevents your cardstock from cracking. So I always recommend scoring those lines, but just to get started so that you know where to put that score line, having that nice soft bend is a useful way to get this to be custom fitted. And because I'm using a medium weight chipboard, you might find that lightweight chipboard is just fine, and lightweight chipboard isn't going to be as thick. So you might need to, this is a way that you can really adapt it to make sure that this pattern paper fits your box. So again, I'm going to line all of the edges with some double-sided adhesive. I do like to make sure that on the side panel itself, I am adhering all 4 edges, and on the glue tabs, I'm getting some adhesive on the outside edges as well. And of course, I'll also use some liquid adhesive when I do go to attach this to or adhere it to my box. The nice thing about the Graphic 45 papers is that they're pretty thick, so it's a really nice quality of paper, and this too may impact the sizes that you end up choosing. If you use papers that are thinner, you might not need quite as much of a lid. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind too. If you are using lighter weight chipboard, if you're using thinner papers than I am, you might need to adjust the size of your lid. Instead of being 1/4 of an inch larger, like I've done on my box, you could maybe get away with maybe just 1/8 of an inch larger. So I am first going to attach the panels, the 2 panels that wrap around top to bottom and side to side. And that is because I want to hide these glue tabs that are on the side. So I start, as you saw, by attaching the glue tab to the inside of the box. And then I just continue to wrap it around. And once you get once you get that first glue tab lined up, it everything else should fall pretty neatly. And that's the first one in. I'll do that again. I do like to miter all of the glue tabs. That way you just remove some excess paper and it's a bit of a neater finish. So here, just get started on the inside. I'm lining up and I'm using my score line to make sure it's nice and straight across that top edge of the side. And just working my way one panel, one section at a time. The liquid adhesive is helpful if you need to pull it up a little bit just to adjust things. Burnishing really well along the way, and then gluing down all of those additional glue tabs. So the glue tabs on the side, they wrap around to the side, but they also wrap around to the inside and to the bottom as well. So all of this is going to, you don't cut away any paper other than just mitering the edges of the glue tab a little bit. And that way you get really good coverage and you have all of your chipboard nice and covered. So then the last two panels are the two panels that are exactly the same width as the box, and this does not wrap around left to right, but it does wrap around top to bottom. And these last two panels here are what will cover up the glue tabs on the sides. So again, I just start in the on the inside, wrap it around the top, down the side, and then all the way to the bottom. Now, I actually use the sort of the selvage edge of the pattern paper just as extra paper because I knew it would be at the bottom and not visible. If you did that a little bit neater and you cut all of your glue tabs to be the exact same size, that could be a nice look actually at the bottom, but I'm going to cover it up with a piece of black cardstock. This is cut to, I think it's actually just a smidge larger than 5 3/4. I think it ends up being 5 7/8 because of that extra thickness of the chipboard. I did round the corners a little bit just to make sure that everything does fit within the bottom there. And there's going to be a little bit of a border of the pattern paper showing, but this piece, not structural, it's just meant to pretty things up at the bottom to cover up all of those glue tabs. I guess in a way it is a little bit structural. It keeps all of those glue tabs sealed in place, but for me, I'm using it more decorative to neaten up those glue tabs. Now here are those black panels that I prepared and cut down and scored earlier. This is same thing as what we did on the outside, except this doesn't wrap around the top. So it's been cut so that it's just slightly shorter than the height of the box, so 3 7/8 in my case. But I'm first attaching the two panels that have glue tabs on either sides. And again, that's to really secure, now for the third time, those corners so that they are very, very well attached. And it neatens up the inside because these panels here up the glue tabs from the pattern paper. That little bit of glue tab at the top, which you might like the look of. So if you didn't want to do this, I don't think it would be the end of the world. But there is without doing this, there is some of the chipboard that's going to be visible. So I'm using black chipboard and it's very, hard to see. But if you were using, say, craft color chipboard, and you didn't do this, you would definitely see that exposed chipboard. So that is why I like to add these panels, because it does make everything nice and finished at the end, even on the inside, and as well it just covers all of the chipboard in case you were using something that that you didn't have a matching piece of cardstock or color cardstock to fit. And I like the look of covering up the pattern paper glue tab too. So that's the other reason to do it. But it does add that extra support on the inside because we had those hinges or those glue tabs that reinforce those corners again. So that's the bottom of the box completely done, nicely finished so that there's no chipboard showing and no glue tabs showing. So it's very neat. You could sell these boxes too. The construction I feel is it's very, even though this is very DIY, it's a very well constructed box, I think, and you could definitely sell it if you sell at craft fairs, for example. The lid of the box I've done the exact same way initially, where I attach all 5 pieces together. So that's where we're starting at this point. So here's the lid, and all it has is those hinge pieces that are holding the chipboard pieces together. Exactly the same as what I did with the bottom of the box. And the difference when I wrap the lid though is that for my size box, I can actually wrap the entire lid with one sheet of 12 by 12 pattern paper. So that's what I'm going to do instead of, wrapping the outside and then wrapping the inside. All I'm going to do is take one piece of pattern paper and I'm going to do it the exact same way as I did before. I started my score line. The lid, my lid is 1.25 inch high. So my first score line I scored at just shy of 1.25 inch. And I am going to just do a dry fit and wrap this around my lid so that I know where to put my additional score lines in. And I'm going to do it going one way across my 12 by 12 pattern paper. I will rotate and I will do this going the opposite direction too. So this single piece will wrap around all 4 edges, inside and out. And I even had like a little bit extra cardstock. It was maybe about 5/8 of an inch left over. So plenty to spare. But I'm going to do the exact same thing. I did give myself a pencil mark so I know which way to line this up, just in case things are a little bit different. You never know. It's meant to be a square box, but when you're working with things like chipboard, which have a little bit of dimension, and you're working with papers and whatnot of different thicknesses, you just really never know. So I do give myself markings so that I get the direction correct. But again, my first score line was just shy of 1.25 inch, which is the height of my box. And I'm going to start on the inside, start to wrap around the side of the box, and then across the top of the box and down the opposite side. And as I wrap, I'm just giving myself little soft bends so I know where to put those score lines down the length of my pattern paper. And then I'll just trim off the edge. Again, just giving myself just shy of 1.25 inch, because the reason why you don't need to go the full 1.25 inch is because that piece wraps around to the inside, and we have extra layers of cardstock with the hinges, and I did put the nice finishing piece of black cardstock to cover all the hinges. So there's 2 layers of cardstock at the bottom of the inside of the box. So you don't need those outer flaps to stretch the full 1.25 inch. It probably actually won't fit if you did that. So I'm gonna fold all of those lines, and then I'm gonna cut off some of the excess pattern paper here. But I want to use this piece to reinforce the corners in the same way that I used the pattern paper to reinforce the corners when I attached it to the outside of the bottom of the box. And I'll show you where I make my cuts a little bit more clearly. I'll have a diagram in a little bit. As I was doing this one, I was sort of thinking it through and figuring it out. And this cut that I make here, I would actually do it a little bit differently. It doesn't hurt things to do it the way that I did it here, but I think it's going to make more sense and be easier if you do it slightly differently. And I'll show on camera how I ended up doing it, because for the other three corners I actually cut it in a way that is a lot easier. But see, my idea is I want to flip this around so that or I want to cut this so that I do have glue tabs that wrap around the side on the outside and on the inside, because remember, on the box bottom, I had an extra bit of cardstock wrapping around the corner from the outside, and also I had an extra bit of cardstock that wrapped around each corner from the inside. So I want to do the same for the lid, even though technically with the lid, that has less, tension or stress on it because it's smaller. Things aren't being stored inside the lid. The lid is more just resting on top. So you could get away with actually not doing this, but the other reason to wrap it around, at least on the outside, is so that you do cover all of the chipboard and you don't have an exposed edge of chipboard. So it will give you a neater finish, even if you felt like you didn't need the extra kind of structure that it's going to provide. So I've got that cut, and the difference that I made between my first and second cuts was on I'm gonna have those reinforcement sort of glue tabs or hinges. That's gonna be on the same sort of stretch of cardstock. And you'll see what I mean in a little bit. But to get these to actually fit, because it does wrap all the way around to the inside, you're gonna have to take some slivers, take some miter some of these corners a little bit, and I would just be patient and cut just small slivers at a time until it actually will comfortably wrap around the corners without stretching or tearing your pattern paper, because you want everything to lay flat, but you don't want to cut so much away that you might end up exposing more of the chipboard than you intend. So just be patient, take small slices away, and here's the way that I recommend actually cutting away the excess. So you're gonna cut away essentially 2 squares of your pattern paper, just this rectangle here. And you'll do the same on the other side too. Just take those 2 outer squares. And by squares, I mean like the squares that form from your score lines. So I've removed those. And then I'm gonna cut along this edge to the next score line. And then I'm gonna cut along the score line next to it, again just to the score line, and that creates the 2 glue tabs that will wrap around the corner. One will wrap around the corner from the outside, the other is going to fold over to the inside of the box and wrap around the corner on the inside. And you'll see me multiple times just take little slivers, and it doesn't look like I'm hardly cutting anything, and that's on purpose. I just want to take small slivers away so that everything is attaches comfortably and is nice and flat against the box, but I don't leave any exposed edges. So here's that diagram I was talking about. The blue lines are the score lines, and focus on the left side where I've got the red. So that rectangle that is in red is discarded. You can throw that piece away. And then there's the two red lines that are cut lines. So I cut along the score line, and I did miter, along those edges as well. And this is mirrored. You want to do the same thing on the right edge, and you'll want to replicate this on the opposite side too. In an ideal world, you would do the same. Mine's gonna look a little bit different because the first time I was cutting this, I didn't cut it quite as neatly as this. I put one of the glue tabs on the opposite side, and that does make it a little bit trickier to attach things, but even if you did that, it doesn't hurt anything. You can still attach it and it's still equally secured. But I think cutting it this way just logically will make more sense. And because everything is mirrored, you can just look to the opposite side to see what you need to do and replicate the same cuts. So the red lines are where you cut, and the blue lines are our score lines. So then what I'm going to do is start to attach this to my box. And I'm going to do the same way that I did, that I wrapped the bottom. I am going to get double-sided adhesive, all the way to the edges, and I am going to start on the inside, securing it first, and then work my way around to the opposite end. And as I do this, I'm still going to have to make those little adjustments to cut small slivers of cardstock away so that everything wraps nice and flat against the box without tearing the cardstock. And just if you're patient and you just take little slivers, you won't end up with any exposed chipboard. So and having the liquid adhesive is nice too, because that gives you a little bit of wiggle room as you go to attach things down. So I am going to take this again one panel at a time, starting on the inside. I will get this first piece wrapped on the inside. Then you can glue the two tabs along the adjoining sides. So that secures that corner from the inside. And then you can glue your two tabs along the outside, and that will secure that corner from the outside. So that's the ideal way to cut, I think, to cut the sort of those extra tabs that will secure and also pretty up, your corners so that you don't have exposed chipboard. On the opposite end here, this is going to look a little bit different because I cut this a little bit differently before I realized, the better way of doing it. But even if you did it this way, the general idea is that you want to attach the side first, and then attach your glue tabs next, so that you can cover up those glue tabs. So the piece that actually has a glue tab attached to it, that gets glued down first. And any piece that doesn't have a glue tab attached to it, like this edge here, that's the finishing edge. That's the edge meant to look pretty and cover up all of the glue tabs. So that's sort of the operating principle, is if you have an edge that has a glue tab attached to it, you want to glue that one down first. That way you can actually use the adjoining pieces to cover up the glue tab, and that gives you a neater finish. So I'm going to start by wrapping. Again, having the liquid adhesive is really nice. Getting the side down first, then wrapping it around to the sides and folding those down. And this piece does have a glue tab attached to it, so I'm going to get that down. And I'm going to glue the panel that has that inside glue tab. I'll glue that down next and make sure the glue tab is also glued to the inside of the box. And so anything that has a glue tab, just make sure that goes down first. And anything that has a straight edge is meant to cover up those glue tabs. So those edges go down next. So that's pretty much it for wrapping this, and it ends up being, again, a very neat finish on the inside, and you don't have any of the chipboard exposed or showing on the inside or the outside. And the entire lid was covered with just one piece of 12 by 12 with some creative cutting, but it all looks really nice, and that's the box pretty much complete. I did add a little bit of pattern paper to the top just to decorate it a smidge, but I'm leaving this pretty basic because I want this to be nice and flat at the top, because if it's meant to store something, maybe store some ornaments and whatnot, other things might need to get stacked on top of this box, and it's going to be very well structured, so you can put heavier things on top of it, and I think it'll hold up to it just fine. The medium weight chipboard from Graphic 45 is really, really strong. Very, very nice stuff. So that's my finished project for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Thanks. Bye.